headlines this hour. Prime Minister nominee Ahn Dai-hee resigns following criticism that he'd made too much money as a lawyer, allegedly taking advantage of his status as a former Supreme Court justice. A fire at a nursing home in southern Korea kills more than 20 people, mostly elderly patients. And U.S. President Barack Obama announces plans to pull out all American troops in Afghanistan by 2016, bringing an end to the longest war in U.S. history by the time he leaves office. Hello and welcome. I am Kang Tae-ri. Thanks for tuning in. President Park Geun-hye's nominee for Prime Minister Ahn Dai-hee has stepped down amid controversy over his post-retirement earnings as a lawyer and allegations that he was granted privileges from his previous post as a Supreme Court justice. It may be back to square one for the president's reform drive. Choi Yoo-sun tells us more.
I'm stepping down as the nominee for Prime Minister. I'm sorry for disappointing the nation over allegations that I received privileges for my post.
At a press conference Wednesday, Ahn said his nomination would only stand to burden the government and that it had already caused his family stress. He also apologized to the president for the recent dispute. Ahn's withdrawal comes just 6 days after President Park tapped him to be her new prime minister, citing his principles and integrity, saying they would help him successfully carry out the much-needed reforms in the public sector and the government. But soon after he got the presidential nod, it was revealed he made about $1.5 million in a period of just 5 months working as a lawyer after leaving the Supreme Court. Although he had previously donated a third of the amount and said he would return the remaining $1 million to society earlier this week, that didn't stop the main opposition party from demanding his resignation. The presidential office, citing the chief of staff, said President Park seemed regretful upon receiving Ahn's resignation just before the press conference. Wednesday's development is expected to put the brakes on the president's drive to restructure the government and to correct irregularities in the public sector in the aftermath of the Sewol-ho ferry disaster. At the National Assembly, the ruling Saenuri Party also expressed regret that Ahn didn't get a chance to have his qualifications put to the test at a hearing. The opposition New Politics Alliance for Democracy, on the other hand, gave a sigh of relief, then criticized the presidential office's incompetent personnel review system. Choi Yoo-sun, ARIRANG News.
And despite marathon negotiations at the National Assembly over launching a parliamentary probe into last month's ferry disaster, the rival parties remain at odds over a number of critical issues. The talks began Tuesday with the ruling Saenuri Party and opposition parties divided on the method and timing of the investigation. The families of victims attended the negotiations as well and said they will stay until agreements are made. They also warned politicians not to use the accident for political purposes. 16 victims remain unaccounted for and no bodies have been found since last week. To speed up efforts, the families of the missing have agreed to let authorities cut into the 4th floor of the sunken vessel. Fire departments and maritime safety agencies may soon be empowered to take command of the military and police in emergency situations. That is just one of the changes being considered in a set of revised bills spurred on by last month's ferry disaster. The Ministry of Security and Public Administration also said that government safety inspectors may be granted power of the judicial police in an effort to boost safety management. The revisions, which also include the establishment of a new deputy prime minister and the formation of new safety and personnel ministries under the prime minister's office, will be formally announced Thursday. After gathering public opinion on the changes, the bills will go to the National Assembly for a vote. Despite those efforts, the country's safety management system has once again come into question as Korea woke up to news of yet another horrible accident this morning. At least 21 people have been killed in a fire at a nursing home in southern Korea. Kim Hyun-bin has the details.
Most of the victims were in their 70s, as the hospital specializes in taking care of senior citizens with chronic health conditions. According to Yonhap News Agency on Wednesday, 21 people were killed while 8 others are still receiving treatment. But the number of dead is likely to rise, as 6 are said to be in serious condition. Firefighters say the blaze was brought under control within half an hour, but many died or were affected from inhaling smoke and toxic gases. Police have taken an 81-year-old male dementia patient into custody on charges of arson. Officers say they have surveillance camera footage of the suspect, identified only by his last name Kim, going in and out of the room 2 minutes before the fire was ignited in the room. The hospital, which had claimed an electrical short sparked the fire, is suspected of having only 3 nurses on the night shift for the ward. They were taking care of some 80 elderly stroke and dementia patients who would have needed help escaping. Because the lack of medical staff on duty may have contributed to the high death toll, authorities are investigating whether the hospital broke the law by not having enough staff on standby. It was one of the 3 major fires in the country Wednesday. Just hours after the hospital blaze, a 71-year-old man started a fire with highly flammable liquid inside a subway car in Seoul. There were no injured reported. The suspect reportedly confessed to police of starting the fire and said he was trying to commit suicide. Kim Hyun-bin, ARIRANG News.
The opinion polls with just about a week to go before local elections here in Korea show the ruling party trailing in key races nationwide, but the party still enjoys a level of support in 2 central Korean provinces where its candidates are in tight election battles against their more liberal opponents. Ji Myung-gil reports.
Korea's 2 Chungcheongdo provinces are not just in the center of Korea geographically, they also tend to be a litmus test for overall election results. It's why the leadership of Korea's 2 biggest political parties spent the first day of campaigning last week on the stump for local candidates in the 2 central provinces. And it's an especially important region for the ruling Saenuri party for the elections this time round. Whereas public anger over last month's Sewol-ho ferry accident has had a notable impact negatively on ruling party candidates in Seoul and its surrounding areas, that sentiment hasn't quite extended to the 2 Chungcheongdo provinces. According to recent opinion polls conducted by ACE Research, the main opposition and ruling party candidates for governor are in neck-and-neck races there. Moreover, nearly a third of the region's voters are still undecided. And the Saenuri party is faring far better in the races for mayor of 2 main Chungcheong cities of Daejeon and Sejong City. With the ruling Saenuri party badly trailing in the vitally important races in the capital and nearby Incheon City, the 2 Chungcheongdo provinces represent its best hope for a victory in the June 4th local elections. Ji Myung-gil, ARIRANG News.
For the latest in news that impacts Korea and the world, join Kang Chae-ri for a lively half hour that covers politics, business, international news, and much more. Live at 8 every weeknight on ARIRANG TV.
Human Rights Council headquarters in Geneva on Thursday, finding ways to.
Korea's growth forecast for the year may take further cuts as economic think tanks begin to take in the economic impact of the April ferry disaster. Kim Ji-yeon reports.
Slow recovery following sluggish domestic consumption is prompting institutions to slash their growth projection for the Korean economy. Much of it has to do with consumers spending less after the Sewol-ho ferry disaster in April, which the Korea Economic Research Institute says has raised red flags.
Forecasts for private consumption and household spending fell, and they're not expected to pick up anytime soon. Private consumption has not increased in the past 2 quarters, as it was fueled by negative consumer sentiment following the Sewol-ho disaster.
The state-run economic policy think tank, the Korea Development Institute, has cut the country's growth forecast to 3.7% this year, down 0.2 percentage point from previous estimates. Finance Minister Hyun Oh-seok also voiced concerns that a freeze in consumer sentiment could slow down the Korean economy. Retail and leisure sectors were among those most affected by the ferry incident, according to reports by the Bank of Korea released on Wednesday. Senior researcher of the KERI, Pyongyang Yu says that the government needs to eliminate uncertainties that business entities currently face, such as voting on some 300 bills stalled in the National Assembly concerning labor laws that can make it harder for employers to lay off employees and shorten working hours. Kim Jeon, ARIRANG News.
More Koreans are driving imported cars. The Korea Automobile Manufacturers Association says Korea imported over 75,000 cars worth over $2.5 billion in the first 4 months of this year. That's a jump of 54% on year in terms of volume. The number of imported cars registered last month also set a record at over 16,000. At this rate, the portion imported cars take up is expected to hit the 15% mark this year, up from 12.7% last year. LG Electronics has launched a revamped version of its flagship G3 high-end smartphone today, starting in its home market of Korea and in 5 other cities, including London and New York. The G3 is equipped with a 5.5-inch screen with almost twice the resolution of its predecessor G2. LG is aiming to sell more than 10 million units of the model with the appeal of a simpler interface and a laser focus camera. It comes at a 6% discount, though, to its predecessor in the Korean market, highlighting competition on pricing in the smartphone market. Part of President Park Geun-hye's vision for improving inter-Korean relations includes establishing a peace park within the demilitarized zone dividing the two Koreas. Experts from all around the world gathered in Seoul on this Wednesday to discuss the proposal, not just from a positive point of view, but also the obstacles it faces in getting off the ground. Our Shin Se-min was there.
It is with this vision in mind that I hope to work toward an international park inside the DMZ.
During her speech to U.S. Congress in 2013, President Park outlined her plan to create a peace park within Korea's heavily fortified demilitarized zone. The area is a visible reminder of the division of the two Koreas, but experts say the peace park could be a step forward to bringing them back together. A group of experts gathered at a symposium in Seoul Wednesday to discuss practical ways to begin the Peace Park project. Participating German experts spoke from experiences with their German Greenbelt, a strip of land on the former inner German border that has since been turned into a landmark similar to what many envisioned the DMZ Peace Park could become. The German participants said the DMZ project would emerge as a channel in bridging the two Koreas diplomatically. To move closer to a peaceful unification and to preserve the ecosystem in the zone, experts say both Koreas need to be on the same page and take part in the project. And that is a challenge. Hans Schattel, a political science professor at Yonsei University, said the project will be met with difficulties without the full cooperation of the two Koreas, the public, and the international community.
The South Korean initiative still has some work to do in terms of figuring out how to convince the U.S. and North Korea that a DMZ peace park will not be destabilizing, that the DMZ peace park would not trigger further conflict.
Shin Se-min, ARIRANG News.
Asia's largest medical congress kicked off today here in Seoul, near Seoul, that is, gathering medical experts from Korea and 36 other countries to discuss the latest trends in healthcare. Our Yudian reports.
The Global Healthcare and Medical Tourism Conference is a chance for medical institutions to showcase their latest technologies. This booth, set up by a plastic surgery hospital, caught the eye of visitors by providing a unique consulting experience. Now, with my pictures taken, this special camera will come up with a 3D image of my face, which we can use to apply different types of surgeries. In just about 5 minutes, the consultant shows me with more refined eyes, a pointier nose, and a slimmer facial outline. While Korea is best known for its cosmetic surgery, the conference showed how local medical companies are jumping into the new industry of mobile healthcare devices. Take this portable heart monitor, for example.
The device can send the collected data to your smartphone via Bluetooth. You can then send it to your doctor directly.
Experts say the demand for such mobile health devices will rise.
As people live longer, there's a greater desire to take care of their health themselves. A lot of data has been made available through different sensor technologies. There's a rise in businesses that provide health services utilizing that data.
The abundance of data also enables doctors to treat their patients better.
And when you get that kind of information, you can have for the doctor a specific and also a clear diagnostic.
Melik says devices like this medicine dispenser are useful for patients who oftentimes forget to take their medicine.
The pharmacists have information that you take the right pill at the right time, and also is the patient sent back the information about the compliance.
More personalized medical services that save travel time for patients who can keep their health in check at home. Experts say mobile healthcare devices that allow for that will make up a huge bulk of the global health industry. Yuri-an, Arirang News.
The Park Geun-hye administration has pushed for the so-called creative economy as the next growth model for Korea. Park Ji-won reports on the government's plans to nurture the next generation of creative thinkers who can make the so-called creative economy a reality.
The heart of any creative economy lies within the contents industry, spanning diverse sectors like film, music, and gaming, industries in which Korea has shown steady growth in recent years. Korea had the world's 7th biggest media entertainment industry in 2012, raking in some $45 billion. The nation's contents industry in total logged an annual revenue of nearly $90 billion last year, up more than 4% on year. Zeroing in on its great potential for growth, the government aims to increase its annual revenue further to nearly $120 billion by 2017. That means revenue would have to increase by more than 7% every year for the next couple of years. To achieve the goal, the government has unveiled diverse measures to encourage the nation's young pioneers with creative minds. As one of many efforts, the government will expand the amount of investment funds jointly raised by the private and public for small and mid-sized content businesses to $1.6 billion by 2016. Opening up of the first Content Korea Lab, a free public center equipped with diverse facilities like recording studios and video editing rooms, is also one of the efforts to stimulate the nation's creativity.
Content Korea Lab is where anyone with creative ideas can gather and fuse their minds with others to initiate new projects.
The Cultural Ministry plans to open 10 more centers nationwide by 2017 to act as hubs for inspiring and cultivating even greater creativity for the future. The ministry also aims to pursue balanced growth between the strong sectors like broadcasting, gaming, and films, and relatively weak ones like the music, musical, and animation sectors. Park Ji-won, ARIRANG News.
President Barack Obama says the U.S. plans to remove all troops from Afghanistan by 2016 as it brings an end to America's longest war. With more on that, we now go to Paul E. at the News Center. So, Paul, the U.S. is finally on track to pull out of Afghanistan after nearly 13 years of fighting there. But what are we looking at in terms of a timetable?
Well, speaking at the White House, President Obama said it's going to be a gradual withdrawal. The military will start by reducing the number of soldiers there to 9,800 with the end of the U.S. combat mission at the end of this year. But all of it depends on a joint security agreement with the Afghan government. The move will also mark the first time in Obama's presidency that the U.S. has not had an active combat mission in a foreign country. Our Hwang Jae has the story.
When U.S. President Barack Obama leaves office in early 2017, the U.S. military presence in Afghanistan will be near zero. The president said Tuesday that less than 10,000 American troops will remain in Afghanistan after this year, and roughly half that number will be in the country by the end of 2015. A year later, the United States will pull out its last remaining combat troops.
1 year later, by the end of 2016, our military will draw down to a normal embassy presence in Kabul with a security assistance component, just as we've done in Iraq.
It will put an end to more than 12 years of war launched shortly after the September 11th attacks. More than 2,000 U.S. troops have died in the conflict, plus countless more on the Afghan side. There are currently around 32,000 American troops in Afghanistan. Obama said that so much of America's foreign policy was focused on the wars in Afghanistan and Iraq, and that the future of Afghanistan must be decided by Afghans.
Yet this is how wars end in the 21st century. Not through signing ceremonies, but through decisive blows against our adversaries, transitions to elected governments.
The withdrawal plan has not come without criticism in the U.S. as Republicans say the timeline is too tight. Hwang Jie, ARIRANG News.
And hundreds of political leaders and activists in Thailand have been arrested, with many still in hiding following last week's military coup. Paul, it looks like the Thai army is continuing to strengthen its grip on the kingdom. How many people have been affected by this crackdown?
Well, deputy spokesperson for the Thai military says a total of 253 people have been summoned by authorities. Scores of political figures, protest leaders, academics, and many others have been detained after the government was overthrown last Thursday. The military says half of those arrested have already been released, but added that 53 people have disobeyed the summons by the military council, which is now effectively running the country. On Wednesday, more anti-government protest leaders turned themselves in to police for questioning, rejecting allegations of treason and other criminal charges for inciting violence.
I believe we have done the right thing. We did not threaten to assault or kill anyone. We did not destroy or lock down the government buildings. They were closed before we arrived. The National Peace and Ordering Maintaining Committee sent a letter to us citing security threats, but we have clear evidence.
Earlier, Thailand's military junta had detained former Education Minister Jaturan Chai-sang, who has been a strong critic of the military takeover. Meanwhile, the military has relaxed its public curfew from midnight to 4 a.m. However, it's still imposing a strict ban on any political gatherings.
I see. Now this is our daily dose of technology right here. Paul, Google has been expanding to many emerging sectors, from renewable energy to even robots, and it looks like they're about to take on the auto industry as well.
That's right, Charlie. The internet search giant made a surprise announcement on Wednesday that it would start making its own self-driving vehicles. Now, Google has been experimenting with driverless technology for years, sending computer-guided vehicles across the United States with a near-perfect safety record. In the past, they've always modified cars from automakers like Lexus and Honda in their research, but these new high-tech cars will not have any traditional control, such as a steering wheel, accelerator, or even brake pedals. The U.S. company said the battery-powered vehicles will be completely driven by software and advanced sensors. Google says it plans to build about 100 prototypes later this summer, with early drivers having the option to use manual controls. But if all goes well, the company wants to launch a small pilot program in California over the next couple years. Chetty?
Well, it does look cute. All right, Paul, thank you very much for that update, and we'll see you back here in just about 2 hours. The weather really heat up today, but also that the level of pollutants in the air. And for more, Michelle Park is joining us from the Weather Center. Michelle.
Good evening. Now, yellow dust is affecting the air quality nationwide for the 4th day in a row, and more is expected tomorrow. And currently, skies are looking clear except in the eastern provinces where 5 to 10 millimeters of rain is in the forecast, along with some hail in some regions. Now, tomorrow we can definitely say it's summer rather than spring, with highs jumping even higher than today, reaching up to 34 degrees for some regions, and these unseasonably hot temperatures will last throughout the week. Now, going over to our readings, Seoul will start off the morning at 17 before reaching up to 31 degrees in the afternoon. Meanwhile, the southern cities such as Daegu and Busan will peak up to 34 and 27 degrees. Now, moving over to other regions, Jeju Island tops out at 26, Dokdo at 20, while Mangungang tops out at 31. Well, that's all for Korea. Now, here's a look at the weather conditions around the world.
And that will do it for this edition of ARIRANG News at 8. Thanks for watching.